Mark, thank you very much for taking time to join me on Culture Corner today. It's great to have you on the podcast with us.
Great to be here. Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thanks for taking time out. Just to kick things off, for anybody listening that doesn't know you, if you can give us a bit of an overview of who you are and your background and what you do.
At my age, I've got to try and keep this as brief as possible because it can go on. I got into tech sort of quite traditional routes. I suppose traditional by 1990s standards. I went to university. I got into computing sort of at school, but my dad bought us a ZX Spectrum when I was about 11. That dates me. And we were doing a computer sciences course at school at GCSE. And I sort of found it not easy, but it came naturally. It interested me. I wanted to be a dentist at school, but I realised I was going to have to do all my qualifications at biology, chemistry, and all the sciences. So I went to college, went to university in Huddersfield. So quite traditional then. I think nowadays we do tend to take people from a lot more diverse backgrounds. Just having a degree isn't necessarily be all and all, but at that time it was. It was a market where you needed to be sure that you got a good standard to get a job. So from there, I left university and got a job very, very local to me. I was living in Garforth, East Leeds, and there was a consultancy just up the road, about 500 metres from me, and didn't even realise we were there until I saw the job posted. At the time, it's probably posted in the Yorkshire Evening Post or something like that. That's how we applied for jobs at the time. So I went there for about 5 years. I was doing everything. We were running Ethernet cables across ceiling tiles and plumbing in, ports and looking after dusty old routers in warehouses and running people's wide area networks. We were also doing, most of my work was Fox-based database programming. We had an estates management system for hospitals that we used to manage via Fox-base. But also I was trying to sell people websites at the time. So this would have been like 1995, 96. And a lot of people didn't want them. They couldn't understand why they'd want to pay for a website. Why would they want that on the internet? They didn't realise that people would be going onto the internet to buy things. And at the time, people weren't really doing that. So that was really interesting. I was sending mail shots out and things like that. It was a really interesting job. Lots of different things there. Eventually, I ended up at a company called Team Talk, which was down Wellington Street here. It was basically just a sports website. That then merged with Sporting Life, which I think was a bigger name at the time. We rebranded to 365 Digital Media, and then Sky bought the company in about 2007, I think. Right. So that's where my long service at Sky sort of comes from. So I was at Sky for 17 years, but it included, say, 6 years at Team Talks, Sporting Life. Now, Sky wanted us to run their sports website, basically, skysports.com. We did that. First thing we did for Sky was a complete rebuild. I was doing back-end data ingestion of PA and Opta sports data. I was also doing front-end coding, middleware, database, Oracle stuff. So everything. I think that's quite common, sort of early 2000s, mid-2000s, just to be a full-stack developer. It wasn't a front-end or a back-end person. It wasn't really a thing. It was just you did what you needed to do for that website. Eventually, Sky bought 500 people up from the Austerley campus into the dock in Leeds. I was working for a guy called Paul Lemon at the time. He was the head of tech. I was a scrum master, and I helped him and a few others bring maybe about 80 people into the first team there, which was Sky's service team.
Oh, wow.
I think I probably interviewed about 150 people in the space of about 8 months. Really interesting time, really interesting job. Eventually, I said to my boss, look, I'm thinking of leaving. I've done everything that I can here. And he said, well, do you fancy running your own team? So I then brought another team up from Austerley, about 35, 40 people for what we called it digital agency. It was internal applications for Sky, timesheets, visitor booking systems to look after the vans that go out on site. So I did that while I was head of tech for about 2 years. Got an offer from Lad Bible, which is a very interesting company. I could spend hours talking about Lad Bible. I don't think it's quite what people think it is. Yes, it's viral videos on Facebook, but there's a whole media marketing arm to that company as well. They deal with some massive clients like Disney and Paramount, that sort of thing.
Wow.
Did that for 5 years. I was director there. I looked after everything, IT support, which I hadn't done before, which was eye-opening, very difficult world, IT support. You get shouted at when things are going wrong, but no one recognises anything when things are going right. But I also had the web team, the app team. We did a complete rebuild of the web platform while we were there, new CMS. I was looking after the UX team, SEO, a bit of data science as well, a bit of data engineering as well. So that was great. 5 years I did that. It was one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done. Then went to compare the market for the last 2 years as a director of data engineering, which was a little bit of a departure for me. I'd sort of done a bit of data engineering back in the day when people didn't call it data engineering. But wow, times have changed since then. And it was a bit of a steep learning curve, but I wasn't there for the technology side. I was there to look after the culture, the team, the processes, figure out what was not quite working in the data engineering team. It was a large team as well. I think it was about 80 people in that team when I arrived, and then we merged it with another, with the BI engineering team. We've grew to about 110. So some interesting issues, mostly around people, process, getting them closer to the business and making sure that we knew what the data engineering team was doing was value-based rather than just because this is cool and it's new tech. So that's what we've been doing for the last two and a bit years.
Oh, fantastic. That's all going to align with what we're talking about on the podcast. So that's awesome. Thinking about your journey into leadership when you were at Sky, was there a certain moment, a certain influence, a certain moment that pivoted you, or was it just I've done everything I can as a dev, I want to go and move on to something else?
Yeah, there actually was a specific thing that happened. So I was working on, at the time, like the iPad was quite new, and the iPhone was really coming on leaps and bounds. So Sky wanted to increase its footprint across all digital media. So they'd done a Sky News iPad app, which was really successful. They wanted to do a Sky Sports iPad app. Now, because for Sky Sports, we were based in Leeds here, and we had a CMS that ran the Sky Sports website. I went down to London to Australia as a sort of liaison for the team to represent the CMS team.
Right.
And I walked into what I found out was a Scrum team, and it sort of changed my life in some ways. I'd never seen Agile working before. I'd heard about it, but never had any exposure to it. The Scrum Master that was running the project was really good at what he was doing. Quite traditional at the time, but this was like 2008, 2009. So things hadn't really progressed in that team. They were doing very standard Scrum, but it worked really well for them. And I just really enjoyed the ceremonies. I enjoyed working with that team closely. I loved the fact that we were all estimating work together. So people on that team were estimating my work as well, because I was having to explain to them what we were going to do, how the CMS was going to change and that sort of thing. And I just thought, this is great. It solves some of our problems that we're seeing in the Leeds office, where the editorial team are basically the product owners, and they're just throwing work to us. We spend 6 months building a website, and then they say, that's not right. And it takes another 6 months to actually get it live because we're having to tinker with it. So that agile, and specifically that sort of incremental delivery was the bit that I thought, this is a game changer for us, specifically us in Leeds, who'd not really dabbled with that agile woo before. Wow. So I put myself forward quite soon after that to actually do a Scrum Master role. So I was doing this sort of Scrum Master role whilst I was an engineer. So I was still doing Perl, PHP, Java code, but also doing all the ceremonies for the team. And it worked so well that we eventually made me and one other person in the Leeds office official Scrum Masters. And that's when I stopped coding, basically. So that's probably 15 years ago now. I have touched code in the last couple of years, but not in anger. And but my skills, my communication skills sort of shone there as well. I'd always been really good talking to the journalists and the editors and the people that were sort of our pseudo product owners, helping them understand the technicals, helping them understand why it was going to take so long, or why we couldn't do that, or why we could do that. And I suppose at the time we were sort of, I don't think tech is any longer just people sat in a corner in the dark just bagging out code. There are pockets of that, but then it was still sort of, we were coming out of that, and it was still helpful to have someone like me that could translate tech into business speak.
Yeah.
And as a Scrum Master, you're sort of looking after a team. Well, you are looking after a team, maybe not from a line manager point of view, but you've got their best interests at heart. You need to set a culture for that team, make sure that everybody's working well together, doing your best as a Scrum Master to grease the wheels. So that's sort of where my journey in leadership started as a Scrum Master, actually. And, I think the Scrum Master role is a bit weird. I think a lot of people are moving away from it now.
Yeah.
I still think it's quite a valuable role in a non-tech point of view, like a pseudo line manager almost.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoyed that so much that I wanted to do it on a bigger scale and have more control over the technology and the people that I was hiring and that sort of thing. So when I got the opportunity to be head of and bring that team up from Austerley, I jumped at that and hired some really great people into that team. It was a really diverse team. It worked really well, very efficient. I think we had, pretty sure in that team of 500 at Leeds, we had the lowest attrition rate in the team.
Oh, wow.
More, there are some missteps there. We'll probably talk about discipline and performance, but mostly it was a really high performing team with people that really enjoyed working with each other.
Brilliant. So you've been involved in creating cultures within teams, looking at performance and creating high performing teams for many, many years now. So you've got a lot of experience to share with us. So I'm thinking, if you think about the companies that you've just mentioned there, so you've got Sky, which is a multinational, could say that. You've got the Lad Bible, the privately owned business. I think you were quite close to the owners.
Yeah, I was working with the founders there.
Yeah, with that. And then you've got a highly regulated organisation in Compare the Market.
Yeah.
Obviously, diverse businesses there. Which of those, I suppose, what I'm looking for, which of those created or caused you the biggest challenge within your leadership journey and why?
Probably Compare the Market, just because it was difficult to do much about the issues. Whereas at Lad Bible, I had to do a lot more. I had to do things that I'd never done before in my career. Yeah. That was difficult but rewarding, and then I had a lot of autonomy about what I could do because the founders weren't tech people really. They were looking to me as the senior tech person to tell them what we wanted to do. So that was really hard but rewarding, and I could make those final decisions. Whereas Compare the Market, great place to work, nice, a lot of really nice people there, but some of the governance does overshadow what you're trying to do and slows things down, and it can get a little bit frustrating when you've got 3 or 4 meetings you have to do just to get one decision made, or you need a certain people in the room for certain meetings. You need at least 3 directors in this specific meeting before you can make any decisions. So that was frustrating. I was working on an agile transformation project sort of the last 3 or 4 months, and although everybody in the company wanted to make everything more efficient, work agile, do incremental delivery, it was very difficult to get those teams moving in the right direction because there was so much work already in the pipeline and a lot of governance surrounding that and what we couldn't do. So that was frustrating. I guess difficult, yes, but also really frustrating.
Biggest challenge. I was going to actually ask you, with it being heavily regulated industry, is it very difficult to innovate in that environment, and can you work around it, or is it just you have to follow specific procedures?
To be fair, there was quite a bit of innovation happening, and as long as it was coming from the right places, it was doable. There was certain people you had to influence to sort of get things done, and you had a really good director of data governance that came in and proposed a lot of innovation. He was very influential, and we had a really good relationship, which meant that we could get a lot of stuff pushed through because he was governance. He knew what we could and couldn't do, and he knew where to bend things, and that worked really well. Me working quite closely with him, I could get things done in the data engineering team that might take a little while otherwise.
Nice.
But we did, we this was in the platform team, the web platform team, but we did pivot on our tech stack about a year and a half ago. And as long as we were explaining to the board and the CEO what we were doing and why and how that saved us money or increased revenue, then they were quite open to it. But yeah, there was still a lot of governance there, still a lot of double checking, a lot of people involved in everything. But you could do innovation. It was just knowing who to influence, how to influence, who to get the sort of governance plan from. You know, how do we navigate through this governance in the best way possible? Yeah. So it was possible. Yeah.
Using the skills of a good leader, isn't it? Knowing who you need to speak to, who you need to work closely with. Yeah.
And that was one of the reasons I was brought into CTM, that data engineering team that were a little bit siloed from the business. The previous incumbent was probably not as across his colleagues in other areas as I was. You know, one of the things I always do is make sure that I know who's who, what they're there for, what I can get out of them, what they need me for, and make those, you know, friendships, I think is probably the best way to put it, across the business as well as in the actual team that I'm managing.
That really makes sense.
It sounds obvious really, but not everybody does it.
No, definitely no. Not everybody thinks of the wider picture, do they? Yeah. Do you think, knowing our conversations we've had previously, do you think that experience comes from your days back at Sky? Because I know you mentioned to me you had to manage relationships across different departments, different reporting lines, people you liaise with. Do you have any sort of hints or tips or strategies that have helped you?
It just doesn't sound massively corny. My as far as stakeholder management goes and your peer management across other teams, it's just don't be a dick. and you know, I there's not a lot of people that I don't get on with in business and in, you know, personal life. But there's people that I don't particularly like, or there's people that I don't think are necessarily doing the best job they can. But I still get on with them. I still make sure that, you know, the relationship's good, and because it means that I can talk to them about things that are going wrong openly then. Whereas, I mean, I can think of actually, well, I'm not going to name them, I'll tell you what the company was, but there was definitely one person that I've interacted with in the last, I'm going to say 10 years, so that it's not too exact. And there was no way that I could form that relationship. They just didn't want to know, and they were doing their thing, and they just wanted everybody else to do what they wanted them to do. And I just couldn't crack that one. And that's like one person in the last sort of 10, 15 years. So, but I still had a cordial relationship with them.
Yeah.
You know, I'd still, it didn't all fall apart. You know, we didn't end up shouting at each other.
Yeah.
And to be honest, when I was an engineer, I did have problems with people. I can't have to mention this because there's people watching this. They'll know me from the past, you know, shouting at people in the office. I've thrown things in the office before. But I learned how to control that anger. And when I learned how to control that anger, that's when my career took off. Because nobody wanted to manage me. You know, I was a bit of a hothead. No one knew what I was going to do next. You know, I got disciplined from my boss once because I told someone to F off in the office and someone complained about it. Learning to control that where it comes from and being calm has helped me immensely. And that applies to relationships across the board as well.
Almost taking a deep breath, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not easy, is it? But you, like you said, you learn and evolve, and you've got the foresight and the self-awareness, I suppose it is, to think, right, okay, like that's not right. How do I evolve and how do I develop? And obviously it's seen you on a massive trajectory moving forward. Do you think because you were close to the people at Lad Bible, the owners, you know, did it make things difficult sometimes around decisions? Because it was quite a tight, overrule me here, but like my vision is it was quite a tight-knit group. Did it cause any issues?
It was a tight-knit group, but I think that worked really well. I suppose it's a balancing act, and it's a balancing act with the founders there. It's been a balancing act, you know, since I became sort of head of, working with higher level stakeholders, CEOs, and, you know, C-suites. You need to be as honest as possible, but also you have to give them. You have to influence them, and that sometimes means maybe bending the truth slightly. So, the founders there were really no different to C-suite level people at other companies. I suppose the difference is, they were texting at 11:30 at night on a Friday, asking questions, and on a weekend, and you sort of had to be there for them when they were doing that. That's the sort of thing that if you weren't answering those questions or being there for them, they would see that as you're not interested in this company, and you know, and it's hard because it worked really well there, and I love that job, and I love the founders of Lad Bible. But it could be quite hard in that respect. And like I say, if you weren't that person, you weren't right for that company. And that did lead to that sort of, not quite cliquey, but, you know, they were keen on loyalty and you know, and being there for them when they needed you, which actually worked out really well for me. I mean, I'm a very social person when it comes to that sort of, you know, being in the office, and I like to know everybody. I like to get to know people, so that I can then pull favours in when I need them, or, you know, be able to have good conversations with people. So, yeah, I get where you're coming from. It actually works really well there. And it's probably very different now because they're you know, IPO'd and the PLC now. So they've got a board of directors rather than the founders. But,
But with a founder-run business that's still heavily involved, there's always that extra almost a request for an extra mile and an extra commitment to show that you
and it wasn't quite a startup, it was definitely a scale up, and you know, they were still wanting to run at a very fast pace, which again suited me fine. The tech team that we put in place there were really good. Everybody had shared goals and vision, you know, mostly everybody was aligned. Now, you know, when you talk about was it easy or not making decisions, there were some things we didn't agree on, and some things I had to say, I don't think that's a good idea, or I don't think that's going to work. And we either disagreed and we ended up doing it anyway, or they took my advice and didn't do it. When we did things that I didn't necessarily agree with, we tried to make sure that we backed it up with data. So, for example, you know, Lad Bible, a lot of ads on the website. That's how they make the money from the website. We had a really good UX guy, and it was a matter of making sure that we blended the ads with the UX to make sure that people were still happy using the page. So when we had people come into the building, for example, that wanted to put more ads on or do something different with the ads that broke the user experience, we would give our advice that that's not a good idea, or we don't want to do that. But if we have to do it, we'll back it with data. We'll make sure that we're understanding how people are using it, track people on the website, look at the revenue, and, you know, just make sure that it's working, so that I can either say, right, we're pulling that, you were wrong, or they can say to me, I was wrong, and it was working really well.
Well, because I was going to say, it's interesting that one of my questions was going to be, have you ever been in a situation where you've said no to something that was either, I was going to say political, but I suppose with strong stakeholder backing? And how have you managed sort of the fallout from that? But it sounds like you're very data driven in your decisions.
Well, that was a really good example of one where we'd said no, and the person was new into the business. They had a good background, strong background, increasing revenue on websites like that. So when they were asking us to do certain things with the tech, we were just, this isn't going to work. It's going to break the website. Now, the data proved us out actually in tech, so we did it. You know, we agreed to disagree and move forward. We did it, used the data, and said this isn't working. It's you know, it's degrading the website experience. Less people are using it. People are bouncing more. So, and we ended up, you know, reversing that decision. So it all worked out fine. Everybody was happy with that decision because we tested and proved out that it wasn't going to work. So,
Do you think that's important as a leader when you come to those difficult situations, that everyone airs their view, but whichever way you decide to go, you move on?
It's but there's a balance between doing that once and doing it 10 times.
Right.
You know, if you are constantly disagreeing, moving forward, then either you're wrong in your tech decisions, or they're wrong in their business strategy. You have to get to a point where you say, well, we're constantly saying no, and you're constantly doing it. Now, if you're constantly doing it and it's working, then you have to look at your own strategy and tech and think, well, you know, maybe I'm wrong. But it's, you have to make sure that it's not happening all the time. You know, if you're going to disagree and go forward, then it's not a one-off, but it should be a rarity, because you should try and be all aligned and agreeing what your strategy is and how it's going to work.
That makes sense. And listening to you talk about the 3 businesses, Have you had to change your management style or adapt your management style to be successful in each of those?
Yeah, I mean, Sky's very natural because I was there for so long and I moved up the ladder and I knew lots of people there. It's sort of, I didn't really change what I was doing. I just sort of had more people to look after and what I was doing seemed to work. And because I'd been there for so long, I must admit, going to Ladby was a little bit scary because I'd not done it in another company before. You know, I'd done the leadership, had all been at the Sky. And that was difficult because I was seen as an outsider by the tech team. They were a little bit distrustful of me. They weren't necessarily getting on very well with the management there, with the founders. So when I walked in, the founders said to me, well, do what you want with that tech team, i.e., you know, if they need to leave, then figure that out. And the actual tech team thought that I was a mole for the management. And actually, you know, I said to Solly when I got there, I said, look, I'll go and meet the team first. I'll make my own decisions, then we'll see how it goes. But that was difficult because it was the first time I'd really been in a position where I was distrusted by the team that I was looking after, and I needed to gain that trust. Now, actually, it ended up where most of the tech team left, and I ended up starting again almost from scratch. Which meant that I could hire people sort of in my image that had my cultural beliefs and then build that team from there. So I hired a really good senior engineering manager. He had some really good engineers, and that led to a really good team that were high performing. I think the turnover is ridiculous. I think since I left, there's only one engineer left since I left 2 and a bit years ago. So, you know, and that company has a lot of churn of other staff. So yeah, I had to figure out how I was going to convince these people that I was doing the right thing. So, it was just a matter of going through things logically. You know, I'm doing this because of this, and I'm going to bring a product owner in because I think there's no link between the business and the tech, and talking through some of the decisions that have been made in tech, like, you know, we're going to use Golang for this app and there's no one here anymore to maintain it, you know, going through those decisions and just having conversations with the senior leaders in that team as to why that happened, what I would have done differently, and just coming to an understanding. Hopefully so that they could understand that I was trying to do my best for them. Now, as I say, it sort of fell apart a little bit, but ended up, you know, great. But then I went up into Compare the Market, completely different, you know, 80 to 110 people. It was the first time that really I couldn't form personal relationships with the whole of the team, which I had done in my previous roles. And I think having those personal relationships with everybody in the team worked really well for me. You know, everybody down to the juniors could come and talk to me. I had a relationship with them, went to the, you know, pub together or whatever. Whereas I couldn't really do that, and it's split between Peterborough and London as well, the team. So it was mostly about just saturating people with comms, and you know, every time I got the chance to speak to people, it was I would talk about points on my strategy and talk about different little nuggets of things that I wanted to change, I wanted to do. So I was just sort of gradually seeping that into the team. I started doing skip level meetings, which I'd never had to do before. So I was I had heads of underneath me. I was talking to engineering managers every other week, which was really interesting. You know, their view on life was not always the same as the heads of that they were reporting to. So I was getting a slightly different view sometimes of what's going right and wrong.
That's a good strategy.
But over comms was the thing. You know, anything that I was getting and I needed to disseminate to the team, I was making sure that everybody heard it. I was sending that out in an email and doing it in an all hands as well. And trying to meet people as often as possible, trying to get into the office as much as possible, trying to go out on socials as much as possible, even though it wasn't always what I wanted to do. And just to have like little tiny conversations with people that I hadn't met before. And again, I know it sounds quite manipulative, but just dropping in those little nuggets of, you know, in a conversational way, in a social way, what I was trying to do with that team, and you know, what the strategy was, what I'm getting from the board, and you know, but doing it in a social way so that people didn't see me as like this just leader that was just telling them what to do all the time. That was it's difficult. I don't think I got it quite right at Compare the Market, if I'm honest. I think if I was there another year, I probably have cracked that, but I think there's still learnings that I think I could take from that time.
Well, I was going to say that's a large number of people to be responsible for. Communication, constant communication is key, isn't it? I suppose in high performing teams. And I was going to say to you, how did you go about it was going to be one of my questions later on, but it sounds like you've used multiple different channels to achieve that. And because you don't want people just, strange, isn't it, but making up in their own mind like what Mark's going to do. It's like, let's get the information out there, let's get the truth out there, and by whatever means.
Yeah, if there's any void, if there's any sort of news or comms that doesn't make it to people, they fill in the gaps.
That's it.
And people can get quite paranoid. So it's a matter of giving them enough information so that they are comfortable, but also balancing that out with things that you don't really want to tell them, because you know it's going to be detrimental in the short term. So, say a company's thinking of making redundancies. You don't want to be going out and communicating that straight away. You want to wait to see what that actually looks like, how many people are going to be affected, what sort of people you're looking at making redundant before you even mention it, because people will immediately start looking for jobs. You lose your best people first, and they might not need to be worried anyway. It might be that it's one or two and that everybody else is fine. So it's balancing what you need to tell them so that they can trust you, and what you don't want to tell them because you want to make sure that they continue to do the job in an efficient way.
It's really interesting that, because I was going to say there's quite a lot of stuff out there, isn't it, where it's like over communicate with your teams to build up, like you said, to build up that trust. That was a key word, isn't it? Over communicate with your teams. But I suppose a really important aspect is what you were saying there. Don't overshare to the point of creating a negative impact. There must be a ceiling of what you can actually tell people.
I think it's quite important you want to be authentic, you want to be genuine, but also, there's things that have worried me in my time as a people leader, and I have, let that get me down, and that has an impact on the team. Then, if they see that you're down, then they worry as well. And there is a certain amount of, you've got to keep your emotions in check, and make sure you're not giving too much away. And I definitely have been guilty of that in the past. Of I feel the pressure, and I feel the stress from, I think that the board aren't necessarily going in the right direction, and that passes on to the team. And I have found that can be detrimental. It's great to have trust and honesty and close personal relationships with your line reports, but sometimes you just have to keep a bit more stoic and keep it. And I've learned that, I think, over the last 10 years. I've always been quite an open book, but I have learned that I need to just keep a little bit of that back at times, and not be too open and honest with people.
To keep things fairly steady. I was thinking, I was listening to you chat. You've got some amazing experiences. I was listening to you chat about the different sizes of organisations. Thinking about when you were back at Sky, it's so big, and you were working across multiple departments. How did you prevent your teams being, I suppose, overawed or pulled in different directions, and just keep them aligned with where you want to go?
Sky, well, the head of all that did at Sky was quite hard, because we were dealing with lots of, I think we had 80 different apps or websites, or apps or websites across the Sky estate, and there were lots of different technologies in there as well, and lots of stakeholders, and it was very hard to prioritise that work, because, for example, Jeremy Darroch at the time, who was CEO, he came to us and asked us for an app for his off-site leadership social that he's doing, like south of France or something, and that immediately takes priority. There's no arguing with that. There's nothing you can do about it. But it means that there's other quite high-level stakeholders within Sky that weren't getting their work done because we were focusing on that. And it doesn't matter how much you name drop the CEO, they still say, well, you told us that you would do this by this time, and it's not going to happen. Therefore, I'm going to complain to your boss about that. So that was really hard. And did we find a solution? I think, I'm not sure if we found a solution. We managed to get to a sort of balancing point where we were over communicating with the stakeholders, doing a lot of meeting and greeting, making sure that they had faces to names in that team, because it was very easy in Sky for people to just send I was going to say a threatening email. That's probably a little bit harsh, but an email to you and your boss saying this hasn't been done. So, and we found that by going down to Sky and Osterley and meeting people, meeting directors and C-level people, that they were less inclined to complain about some of that thing because they knew you personally and they knew you weren't trying to pull the wool over their eyes or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's how we managed that. In other areas, like when I was Scrum Master for the My Sky app, is it called My Sky now? Sky Service app, I can't remember. But we had the product owner sat right there in Leeds with us. They had full control over that app. They were making all the final decisions on behalf of their stakeholders. That meant the relationship was really good. Everybody in the team knew that product owner. They could ask them questions on a daily basis, and that worked really, really well. Everybody was, had the same purpose, the same goals, same aims. So, yeah, it's again, it comes down to communication relationships. I think that's probably going to be the theme of the day. But just making sure that the team understand the priorities and why we're doing stuff, what their purpose is, removes a lot of those issues. The problem is the stakeholders around them pushing for different things is the bit that you have to control.
Yeah. So over communicating, but more, it sounds like hearts and minds as well, like you said, giving them access to your team, understanding who the key stakeholders are, and be visibility with those as well.
I think the issue is with that team, we were called the digital agency, and people used to treat us like an external agency. And I think some people in Sky actually thought we were. So when they were asking us for work and we maybe weren't delivering on time, they were almost acting like, well, I've paid money for this, which isn't. They did, but it's all wooden dollars, But going and meeting people, so they knew that I was a full-time perm employee at Sky, and so was my team. Helped that because they understood then that it wasn't just an external agency that they expected just to get stuff done.
Yeah, it's amazing what people bring up in their own minds, isn't it? If they don't know,
Yeah, like I say, if there's a void or a gap, people will fill it. So it's just over communication and making sure that people have all the details before they start sending my boss a dodgy email.
Well, thinking about visibility, we've talked about this before over a coffee. At your level, at senior leader, director level, you've got your own team to be visible to, and you've got your own team to manage. How important is visibility for you and for managing upwards as well?
I found out in the last 2 years massively important. So when I came in to compare the market, the job was to basically help the data engineering team get out of a bit of a hole, fix some of the cultural issues, fix the delivery. And I spent about a year really focusing on that and fixed a lot of the issues. And my boss was happy with that. She didn't, in the first year sort of raise any concerns about what was happening with the team. But I found that was a detriment to my outreach to C-suite and senior leaders across the company. Now, I was very close to the other senior data leaders that were working with the COO, so the data governance, data science, that sort of thing. But as far as other areas of the company, some of the CC level people didn't really know what I was doing or who I was or how successful I was being because I hadn't sort of, blown my own trumpet or got in front of those guys to say, look, this is what we're doing in data engineering. I was focused on the team and fixing the team. So that was a big lesson that I learned in the last 2 years was that, and it depends on the company as well, right? So, for example, I know CTOs that are running teams of 5-6 people that are still coding. But on the flip side, if you're a CTO of 450 people or more, you're not coding. You're mostly stakeholder, senior management. So it's finding the right level. And I didn't find that level at CTM for about a year. Now, the second year, much better. I learned what I needed to do. I was going and having regular meetings with the customer service, the chief customer officer, and that sort of thing, chief governance officer. And even if it was just talking to them about what they're doing during the day to day, even if I didn't have anything to offer from a data engineering point of view, they, just in having that conversation, had a much better idea of what I was doing, what my team was doing, and confidence in the fact that I was doing a good job as director. So it's massively important, and it's also you are their conduit to tech, or conduit to data engineering, or whatever platform is you're looking after. And they might have some high-level understanding of what you're doing in tech, but there's a lot that they really don't get. They really don't understand why things take a while, or if you're pivoting, why that's going to take a year when they thought it might take 6 weeks. And it's really important to be honest and open. In fact, probably more than with the team, if I'm honest, because anything that goes wrong if you've covered that up or you're not being completely honest, it will get found out, because you're going to have to fix it at some point, and you're going to have to tell them why that happened. And I found from experience that trying to cover these things up or just flat out lying about things just doesn't work in the long run. You will get found out. Or I'm trying to think of an example where, I've said one thing it happens all the time where the team are saying to you, this is going to be really difficult. We're not going to be able to do this in the next 2 months. It's going to take 6.
Yeah.
And instead of going to your boss or the management and saying, it's going to take 6 months, we can't do it, you'll go, it probably a bit longer. It might be 4 months.
Yeah.
And you'll sort of stretch that truth a little bit. And then it takes 6, and you get asked, why did you say 4?
Yeah.
And
shot yourself in the foot.
So with exec, it's honest and open as possible.
Yeah.
I find that those guys are very robust. They're there for a reason. You're going to see it. You're there for a reason. They're very robust, and they might not like the answer, and they might ask you to try and figure out a way of doing it quicker. But that's where your experience comes in. You can pull in contractors, or you can, ask for a headcount increase, or hire very specific people for a specific role. So there's ways that you can do that. But unless you're being honest with the CEO, they're not going to give you permission. You need to say, I need to increase headcount. I need more money.
Exactly.
So you have to be honest with that.
You need to wear multiple hats as a leader as well, don't you? The way that you talk and communicate with C-suite will be different than exactly what you said there, than you talk with the team. Yeah,
and it comes back to what I was saying about the honesty. I think with C-suite, brutally honest, whereas with team, this is why I said, probably more honest than the team. With the team, there's things they don't need to worry about, and you don't want them to give them extra, issues in their head whilst they're trying to get a job done. If they don't need to, you can keep it back till later. With C-suite, I think it's different, and you need to be a different person. It's interesting, going for roles at the moment. And I was talking to someone last night that going for similar roles to me, and they've been getting some feedback about not having the gravitas at that level to be able to talk to senior stakeholders. Right, Now, I sort of disagree with that a little bit, because the problem is sometimes you'll get someone in a role like CTO or director that has the gravitas with the stakeholders in the C-suite, but I see it as quite aloof by the team, and that doesn't help with line management and team management and purpose and culture and all that sort of stuff. But we're great with the stakeholders and great with the C-suite. It has to be a balance. So I think gravitas is important with stakeholders, but I think companies and hiring managers of senior leaders have to understand there's got to be a balance. It doesn't necessarily mean you've got to have someone that's really good at just talking to, someone that could just do a TED talk that can't line manage a bunch of developers.
That's no good, is it? That's no good. For anybody listening to this that's working for a larger organisation, sort of coaching and mentoring their next leaders coming through, have you got any experience or tips of how do you get the next leaders visible in quite a large, in larger organisations? It must be difficult.
And I think some of it comes from gut feel. I think I've always been good at identifying people that I know will become good leaders, especially at Sky. Well, on Lad Bible, actually, I hired people into roles underneath me that I knew were better than me and would go further and make me look better in the process. And they weren't necessarily people that had strong background in tech, or even strong backgrounds in the role that they were currently doing, but I could see in them that they'd do literally anything. They would run through walls for me. I knew I could get on with a personal level. And then it's just a matter of, when you've got those people in, making sure that you've got plenty of time with them, one-to-ones. Don't skip one-to-ones, at least every 2 weeks with line reports. And just making sure you're having conversations about things that they're facing. Not just, this tech's not working, this delivery's not working, but how are you getting on with this person, this stakeholder, or product owner, or all your line reports, and what are the personal issues that you're currently seeing with those, and let's talk through what you're doing about it and how I would do that. Now, even at this level, I've got a bit of a imposter syndrome. I think most people in tech do. And I must admit, sometimes I feel like I can't believe I'm telling this person how to do this when I'm not sure that how I'd handle it myself. But it's those people that you can see instinctively that just want what's best. They want what's best for everybody, for the business. And they're very good, even-handed, good at spotting poor performance, and will deal with it straight away. Now, how do you then take people that maybe haven't naturally got that and bring them up? And that's harder because some people just don't get the empathy thing. If someone comes to them with an issue or a problem, they'll just go, well, you sort out, that's what I'm hiring you for.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of coaching, a lot of companies are really good at this, at having leadership courses where we'll talk about, I think it's more common now, empathy and SCARF model and status and that sort of thing. Which helps, but I think sometimes people just aren't cut out for it. They're not going to be able to do that, and that's fine because there's tech individual contributor paths that they can go down, principal engineers and that sort of thing. But to be honest, it's mostly just talking people through examples and experiences that I've dealt with that mirror what they're dealing with their line report, and usually say to them, like, how are you going to deal with this? What's your process here? And then correcting them if you're not sure that's going to work. And it's not easy. It's line management isn't, and people management is harder than tech. Tech's very logical, and that's why I think a lot of tech people struggle with leadership, because tech is logical. It will pretty much do what you ask it to do. If it's not working, it's because you've done something wrong. Whereas people are so nuanced and they have their own agendas, their own experience that's led them to that point. So it's mostly keeping close to people, being there for them when they want it, guiding them if they've got people issues. But experience is the best thing for leadership. You need to be doing people management to gain experience in people management to get better at it. And I know that some companies I've worked for, they'll bring people through the tech path and then just give them a leadership role because it's the next step on the ladder, and they'll fail at it because they've not got experience of looking after people. So especially at Sky, we did a good job in making sure people had some line management experience from about mid-level.
The support,
so mid-level could maybe manage one person, and then senior might manage 2 or 3, and then the engineering manager would then have line management over the whole team, and we're making sure that we're giving people the opportunity to. It's just a matter of getting exposure to a wider array of different people's problems, basically.
Exactly. And it's not for everyone, is it? You touched on it there. It's like you can now, tech's great for it, different career paths. You can continue as an individual contributor. You still get, obviously, the pay rises. When I first started out, it was like, well, if you wanted to get a pay rise, you've got to go to, team leader, to manager, to area manager, to X, Y, and Z. But now there's alternative routes, isn't there, for people?
And I suppose I've met a lot of tech leaders, and some of them are much more focused on tech, some are much more focused on the stakeholder and C-suite management. I think I'm probably somewhere in between. And I think people will find a company that wants their sort of style of management as well. So I think, but that comes through in the interviews, and that's why people interview, right? So
exactly.
I went in to compare the market because of my people leadership and cultural skills, rather than the fact that I wasn't a data engineer. That wasn't the point.
Exactly. And if you've built a lot of high performing teams, we're touching on that. Are there any sort of key elements you think within a high performing team, and do you see regular traits? This
can be a little bit of a difficult thing to talk about, because I would say that the best teams that I've had are completely bought into the purpose of the company.
Right,
and also get on well with each other. Even if they've got lots of different personality types, they still respect each other and get on really well. That's what happened at Sky. Very diverse team, culturally and gender. But everybody got on really well, with a couple of exceptions. And even though maybe we weren't always happy with the priority issues that we had, the work that we were doing, we knew that it was going to benefit people in the company. We could see what it's going to be used for and why, and that helped with purpose. And everybody got really, really well, so we could sort of shift work around when needed because no one was going to complain about, well, they're doing that and I'm doing that. Everybody knew it's going to be fair. And having that sort of diversity in my leadership team and in the team meant that everybody knew that there's going to be no bias towards anybody or anything. And that worked really well. Now at Lad Bible, again, because it wasn't as diverse, but because I hired sort of top down, I hired people to work for me that I knew would share in my principles, and then hired people under them that do that as well. So when that team came together, all the similar sort of cultural beliefs, even though they come from different backgrounds, and and they really enjoyed the work and the purpose of the company, even though from the outside, like Bible just looks like funny videos on Facebook. We were passionate about, like I've come back to before, but passionate about making sure that people wanted to use the website and that we were getting value out of people hitting that website and that the ads weren't putting people off. Everybody was really bought into that and really enjoyed the work. So it's difficult because it's always quite woolly and it's difficult to sort of put your finger on that and say, well, I'm going to take that and put that into that team. But if you're hiring for more values and personalities, I suppose, rather than hardcore technical skills, the culture sort of tends to sort of sort itself out. Now that's not to say you don't need good technical people, and sometimes you have to just say, I need a really good technically strong person for the principal engineer or for this specific technology. But the majority of the hires that I've made have been much better balanced between technical and social skills. It's really important as well for that you're hiring engineers and leaders under you that can talk to stakeholders and talk to external people external to the team. There can be in tech quite cynical, hard-bitten people that just, it doesn't matter what the company do, they'll say, well, that's wrong, I wouldn't have done it like that. And those people talking to external stakeholders or C-suite, that can go quite wrong. And it can look bad on them. So, the team at Lad Bible was great. They could talk to anybody in the company about tech and help them understand, in a non-technical jargon way.
That's great. So would you say really thinking about what you were saying there, the overriding key really is people that are bought into the values and the vision or the mission of the business as a starting block.
I suppose one thing I would add to that is the trust in me to be doing what's best for that team as well. I'm the person that's the top of that funnel for tech. They need to know that I'm doing what's best for them. And then, when you've got that trust, it comes down to things we talked about before about having to say no or doing things you don't necessarily want to do. So then the team trust that you're making the right decision. Even if it's something they don't want to do, you can say to them, look, I get it, but this time we're going to do it. We're going to test it. We're going to see how it works. And if it doesn't work, we can tell them where to go. So it's building that trust in me as well, which is probably the hardest thing actually, especially with new teams, like Compare the Market, for example, when I'm parachuting into a team of 110 people. Gaining the trust of everybody in that team is quite difficult.
It's hard. It's hard, really hard. How do you have a go-to way of building trust with the teams when you first land somewhere?
I think I naturally I'm quite humble. And
good trait.
Imposter syndrome as well. So I will always make sure people know that I don't think I'm the most the cleverest person in that room. I'll always have people there that I know that are much more clever than me, especially technically. And I might have the edge on some of the social, cultural things, but it's making sure those people know that I'm not there to tell them how to do their job. I will help them do their job, and I will help them with stakeholder management or getting budget for something that they want to do. But they're my consultant. I'm getting my information from them. So being as honest and open about that, being humble, being quite sort of, I think this is a me thing, but I get putting myself down quite a lot in an amusing way, and it just people see the human side then and realise that just because you're that director, you're human like them, and you've got failings and that sort of thing. And when I've done talks and all hands at Compare the Market, I've been through examples of when I messed up previously in technical jobs and that sort of thing.
That's really good.
Yeah, so it's just people need to know that you're just a human like everybody else.
Yeah.
Now that changes with stakeholders, with exec, and that. You have to sort of remove that side and be much more clinical and confident. That gravitas we were talking about. So you have to be able to do both, and that's one thing where probably you need to, people coming into the higher level roles need to understand that it's definitely one thing to be your authentic self with the team, but sometimes you can't do that with the exec. You've got to give them confidence, facts, and strategy.
It's interesting. I've never talked on a podcast before about managing up, so it only came up in the coffee conversation with us. So it's brilliant to hear how you've got to wear two different hats. You've got the vulnerability, showing vulnerability, humility to build trust within your teams is key, which you're brilliant at. And then, but it doesn't work going up to C-suite.
Yeah.
You'd never last, would you? You've got to be, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and you're rock solid on on what you're proposing.
Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not sure I've completely cracked that one, but I'll still work on it.
No, that's great. Only a few more questions, because I know I've been bending your ear for a while, but I was thinking back when you were talking about building the team at Lab Bible. You brought your senior leadership team in. For people operating at your level, how important is it to be able to select your own leadership team, and do you look for specific?
I think I wouldn't say it's important. I think it's great if you can, ideally that would be the position I'd always like to be in, starting a role as a director or CTO or head of, and actually hiring in that next level. Ideally. And I got to do that at Sky, and I got to do it at Lab Bible, and they're probably the two most high-performing teams that I've had. Going into a team where you don't have that is quite difficult, and I could restructure that team slightly. Maybe not just hire people that I wanted, but restructure it in a way that I knew that I had the people that I could trust. So it took me about 6 months to get to the point where I knew who I wanted in those positions that were currently already in sort of similar positions.
Yeah.
And I brought in a head of from the platform team into data engineering that had been there for a long time as well. And I got to know him quite well in that 6 months. I knew that he's someone that I could work with. So it was a blend of understanding who I knew I could trust and would support me, and bringing people in from other people in from the company that I knew I could do that with.
Yeah.
So I think if you can bring your own people in, great. But it's not the be all and all if you can work with what you've got, but also make some hard decisions if you need to. Continuing to work with people that aren't pulling with you in that position is never going to end well. If you've got line reports that just won't align with what you want to do, no matter how you try and influence them or convince them, then you need to make a decision quite quickly, I think.
I was going to ask you about that. I was going to say to you, your experiences of having people who are maybe performing poorly or toxic team members, that kind of thing. Your experience around that, I said, did you have any sort of hints and tips around it? I suppose from what you're saying is move quickly.
Yeah, I think, and I've made missteps in the past, and it's only really the last 15 years that I've gradually understood, the importance of that. And if you've got someone that's underperforming, and people aren't coming to work to underperform.
No.
They're 99% of the time they are trying their best, unless they're quiet quitting, but they're trying their best, but they're not quite good enough, or they don't quite understand, or they need some extra training. So the first thing to do is to understand why they're not performing. But it becomes apparent quite quickly that, say, a PIP or something isn't going to improve, then you need to take swift action, because it can actually look bad on you as a leader as well, because if it's affecting other people in the team, they're seeing the bad behaviours and seeing you let it slide, they lose trust in you, and and it's coming back to what previously, trust is really important.
Yeah.
Now, as I say, I've made missteps in the past. I've let people slide on their probation, and then a year later we've let someone go because they've just never improved. And I think in tech as well, people are quite introverted at times, and they don't want to have those difficult conversations. Yeah. And I was definitely one of those people when I first became a line manager. I used to put those difficult conversations off and think, they'll improve, it'll be fine, I don't need to tell them. Now I'll just, it's quite cutthroat. I'll just do it. I'll rip the band-aid off. I'll sit the person down. I'll just explain my concerns. it's not often that they agree with all your concerns. If they do, that's great, because you can then put them through a performance plan that will succeed, because they understand what you're saying, and they'll help you. You'll help them, and to get to get better. I had one at Sky where probably dragged on a little bit too long, and he was quite disruptive to the team. Definitely wasn't the right fit culturally, and we ended up letting him go. But I did that probably about 2 months too late, and it did cause me some issues with the trust of that team.
Washback.
It came back, because when we let him go, and I was much more adept at doing that. I think people appreciated it in the team. And now, Lad Bible and CTM, again, I'm using the word cutthroat. It's hard, because it's people's lives that you're affecting. But it's only going to get worse, if you let it slide. So now I'm very appreciative of a company that will, if I say, look, this person's just going to have to go, they'll help me out. And CTM are very good at that. If someone needs to go, they'll
move it on to not the right fit for the business.
Whereas I think possibly Lad Bible, we were quite slow in the process. If we put 3 people through like 2 or 3 pips before saying, this isn't working, and it's quite easy sometimes for people to pass a performance plan, when maybe they shouldn't have. So
probably, because it's not right for both parties either, is it? That I suppose it's not fair for them to stay. It's not fair on you for them to stay, but not fair on them to just keep dragging it out. But like you said, it's so difficult. The conversations are very, very hard,
Yeah, and if the person you're talking to just downright disagrees with what you're saying, it's really difficult, because they're not going to improve to your standard.
No.
And you can go through the data and where they're not performing for you, and you can explain your position. But sometimes people just will not listen to that, and that's just cut it off and agree to disagree. And like I come back to before, if you've agreed to disagree 10 times in the last 6 months, then there's a problem.
There's a problem there, isn't there? There is. But on a more positive note, you've talked about hiring a few times, so I just wanted to quickly roll back to that. Your hiring strategy, outside of take away the technical skills, is that based on sort of a behaviours and values method, and are those the values of the business that you're working for, or are they more about your behaviours and values? So it's a bit of both.
The business can influence how you want them to act culturally. I'll be honest, I've got an idea of what culture means, and it probably just fits in any business, but sometimes the execs or yourself are looking for something a little bit different. For example, in a governed environment where people have got to be quite aware of secure coding and infosec restrictions and things like that. That might mean that your culture's slightly different. That you've got much more reserved people. But in general, I don't think I've interviewed for technical skills for about 15 years. I'm trusting my engineering managers and senior engineering managers that they can understand that. And to be honest, I think tech's 50% and 50% is the person and their personality. I'm looking for someone that I know will be able to talk to other people in plain English when it comes to tech, so that other people can understand what they're doing without the jargon, because some people like to do that. I want people that I know that will get on with all sorts of different personality types. Sounds like a really, really harsh interview process, but I just want to know that people are going to come in and just get on with everybody. That's the first step. No one's going to be arguing about something, and if they are disagreeing, I know that they are going to come to a conclusion that's beneficial, or again, agreeing to disagree but moving forward.
Constructive.
Rather than some people that can just say, I don't agree with that, and I'm just going to dig my heels in and not go your way. But not just to me, to all their peers in the team. Treated people that will treat juniors like the next generation rather than just someone that's there grunt work to do just the rubbish stuff, the tech debt, for example, or legacy stuff. People that will nurture juniors but I like to see people that I've hired doing well. I like to see them accelerate and leave and hopefully do better things than I. And I want other people that will do that same thing as well, because then everybody's working towards a better future. That sounds really random, but everybody's just trying to better everybody else's world, and everybody's working together to improve that culture rather than dragging it back or disagreeing with things. And,
it's great. What penultimate question? What you've been around for a while now. What makes a great culture? What is a great culture?
Someone said this last night at a meetup I was at, and he might listen to this, so I apologise for nicking this, but he said people coming to work to have fun, but also getting the work done in an efficient, timely manner. So I think it's like exec can struggle with that, like people coming to work to have fun. That's not what we want. They won't be doing work, but they do. People really enjoy coming to work. They enjoy the people that they're working with. They've got the purpose of what they're doing in that product. They're just they're enjoying life. Everything's just going to work. And if you've got a team that are enjoying themselves and they're coming to work to enjoy themselves, the battle's mostly won. Now, yes, there might be difficult technical problems that you have to solve, but what year is it? 2025. A lot of those technical problems have all been solved one way or the other. So it's just them understanding how to use the tools available, like AI, for example, nowadays. To do that technical, to do the technical aspects. So really, the battle's won if you've got a team that's coming in, that enjoys their work, that will go the extra mile as well.
Pulling together.
At Sky we used to pay a lot of money for out of hours support, which is right. You should do that with your engineers. But a lot of people didn't have that culture, and we were relying on the tech team to just jump online on a weekend if there's something going wrong. And it wasn't a very comfortable place for me to be, because I wanted to make sure that they were recompensed for that. But they used to do it because they were passionate about the product. They were passionate about the work that they'd done. They knew that they'd be letting other people down if they didn't do it. And not just tech people, but people around the company. So it's that purpose and just having fun in your job. And I know that's, again, like I say, it's really woolly, and it's probably not something that execs always want to hear. People coming to work to have fun, but that's definitely a big step in that direction.
Because you spend a lot of time at work, don't you? You spend a lot of time at work or working. So if you have fun, your productivity goes up. If you're all aligned to the right values and vision, it all helps moving through the process, doesn't it? And
I'm not one of those people that'll say everybody's got to stay right up to the clock at 5:30 and everybody's got to be at 9. Quite the opposite. I'm quite flexible. I like people to be in the office a bit because I like seeing people. But if you've got a team that are really enjoying the work, they've got purpose and they're having fun, they will stay after hours to get stuff done because of professional pride, not because they care about the revenue, but because they enjoy doing that and they want to get it finished and they want it to be right. Now, like I say, you don't want to. It's difficult if you're looking at everybody's gone at 5:30. You might be then thinking the culture's not right, and it is probably a clue to the fact the culture's not right. It's not the be all and end all.
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much. This is great to have you on. Really enjoyed the conversation, and thanks for taking the time to join me.
Thank you. Cheers. It's been great.
Cheers. Thanks, Mark. Ta.